Rekhi Centre of Excellence for the Science of Happiness, which is one of the organizing partners for this international conference, the Happiness Meet 2020, in collaboration with the Indian Institute of Management and the Partha Ghosh Academy of Leadership. The conference is to find areas of research interest in the science of happiness, discovering the convergence between academics and the industries for a happier workplace. Rekhi Centre's major thrust areas, among others, have been academic, research and outreach of many. We have catered the concept and practice of happiness from academics to over 4,500 students thus far in the last 4.5 years alone. They have joined or will join the private sector, the industries. Many have written to us saying that the learning has been a blessing for their job life and life as a whole, beyond just living. However, we know that there is a possibility for the center to enhance its knowledge and increase its deliverables to the industries in the science and practice of happiness, although a lean work on outreach has been initiated either through the Rekhi Centre or at the individual level with SAIL, Steel Authority India Limited, Tata's, including Central Reserve Police Force and the West Bengal Police, and many others, of course. We would like to enhance research in the science of happiness in several areas for industries and others in collaboration with the academics. The conference is designed to bring the best of minds to help us understand how academics and business industries can work together for future of humanity. We realize both premises are responsible for health and happiness of the planet and all it contains, including the sentient beings, material and non-material. Our panel today consisting of Dr. Richa Chopra, Dr. Srihari Krishna, and Dr. Tho Havin is on mindfulness and relaxation at workplace, the central theme of the conference. We will try and discover how mindfulness connects with not only relaxation, but being fully aware at the individual level, transcending to functioning at the organizational level. It'll help us to find a blend between work and happiness and how each help the other and enable Rekhi Centre an avenue to bring some of the component in the research that could bring positive implication to industries and academics. We wish academics in partnership with industries to resolve one of the many challenges, crisis today, in fact, including the big one towards the sixth extinction of the planet Earth. We'll have Dr. Tho Havin speak first, followed by Dr. Srihari, and then Dr. Richa Chopra. With this brief background, may I now introduce Dr. Tho. Dr. Tho Havin. Havin is a royal family name from Vietnam. Tho means his first name, which means the longevity of life. I know Dr. Vinh Tho for a long time now as a brother, in fact, a bigger brother. I call him Au. Au in Bhutanese language means a big brother. He's a big brother in spirituality. So Dr. Vinh Tho is the founder of the Eurasia Learning Institute of Happiness and Wellbeing. When he realized that there were so many distressed children who were in problem, who were, with different kinds of difficulties, and this is where he came in. He was the former program director of Ghosh National Happiness Center in Bhutan, and as well the former director of learning and development at the International Committee of Red Cross, from where he joined us in Bhutan as the program director for the Ghosh National Happiness Center. He was the former director of Campfield Seminar for Curative Education in Switzerland. He holds many positions. He's gone to war filled with Red Cross teams. He's done so many great work in his life. He holds a PhD in psychology and education from Geneva University. He is also a Buddhist teacher in Vietnamese Jain tradition, ordained by Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, our guru, who is no more today. Dr. Tho is the author of several books, many articles, and he's an international speaker. His latest book on publication, which I'm just bringing it out, is about transiting from personal to organizational happiness. With this very short introduction, I now invite Dr. Tho to kindly share the platform and share some of his visions towards how we can bring happiness in workplace from an individual level to organizational level, and how could we go into some of the areas in research so that we have about 40 research scholars with the Rekhi Centre here today, and they are in different areas of happiness research, and I'm sure they will be very inspired to pick up a lot of things what you're going to say. Thank you all. With this, I let you take the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samdhu. So nice to see you again after a long time. Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here this morning with such a remarkable audience. I would like to share a few thoughts and a few experiences that we've had in the past years, bringing happiness and well-being both to schools and also to businesses. And as I understand, the theme today is more focusing on the industry, so we'll focus on the experience we've made in the business world. First of all, I would like to share a little bit if you want, the theoretical background that we are using. And it's been based on one hand on the work we did together with Dr. Samdhu in Bhutan at the Gross National Happiness Center. So Gross National Happiness is in a way the framework that we use. And we have tried to make it more applicable to businesses. And we have based our work on research that has been done in the Zurich University on the conditions for happiness and well-being in the workplace. And interestingly enough, this research started by understanding the conditions that enable for a child to develop in the best possible way to really unfold their full potential. And then we tried to see how what we understood from the development of the child, how could this apply to adult life and more specifically to workplace. And we came up with a framework that has 5 main components. So the first one is very obvious. It is we need to fulfill the material needs. And I won't go into that because that's quite obvious. You know, in the workplace, it's from a decent salary over to safety and the material conditions of work. Well, I think that it's very easy to understand that. Now let me move to the second one, which seems to be very important, which is emotional security. So as we all know, the workplace has changed dramatically in the past years and will continue to change dramatically. In the past, management was a lot about command and control. And as long as we manage our people with command and control, the best result you can get is to have people who are obeying, so obedient people. But obviously, we are in a situation in the workplace where obedience is by far not enough. We need people who are innovative, who are creative, who can do teamwork, who are able to have initiatives, and being obedient won't allow that. So to have the kind of workforce that we need today to meet the complexity and the rapid changing work environment, we need people that have very different conditions. And the first one that allows for creativity, innovation, teamwork is emotional security. So to create an environment where people feel emotionally secure, safe, is the first condition. The second one is social acceptance and integration. As human beings, we need to feel that we are part of a group. We need to feel that we're accepted. We need to feel that we can count on our coworkers, our friends, our family. We need to feel that we are there for them as well. So it's a two-way process. So the quality of human relationships is absolutely central to our ability to develop and to perform at our highest level. So first of all, emotional security. Second of all, social acceptance and integration. The third dimension that we need to look into is learning and development. As I said, we are in a fast changing environment. Work is changing from day to day. With the development of artificial intelligence, we know that the work in the coming years will look not at all anymore the way it used to be. It will be a change that is as radical as was the change of the first industrial revolution, where machines gradually took over from human physical labor. Now it's really intellectual labor that is going to be replaced by machines. So we need to focus on those areas that machines will never be able to take over, the purely human components. And this includes things like emotional intelligence, social intelligence, relational intelligence, creativity, teamwork. So this kind of dimensions play a central role. So learning and development is to ensure that we're creating an environment where people can live, learn all through their life and are always able to meet the changing demands of our time. And finally, the last dimension that we need to be focused on is shared and lived values. Because in the natural world, let's say with animals, instinct dictate behavior. But in the human world, it should be values that dictate behavior. And so we need to have organizations, businesses that have a clear vision, a clear mission, clear values. But most importantly, we have to make sure that behavior are aligned with these values. So the values have to be shared and most importantly, lived. So these are the 5 axes that we are working on when we work on businesses: material conditions, emotional security, social acceptance and integration, learning and development, and lived and shared and lived values. Now, in order to be able to manifest these conditions, we need to develop completely different competencies than those that we are used to develop usually in the workplace. And there are 2 fundamentals. The first one is mindfulness, and the second one is emotional intelligence. So mindfulness is the very foundation. Mindfulness is our ability to be fully present to what lives in ourselves and around us. Our ability to focus our attention on the present moment without being constantly disturbed either by regrets of the past, worries for the future, or simply the constant distraction of modern world. As long as our attention is determined by external factors, we are not determining from within. We are not free human beings. Our freedom is, first of all, our freedom to align our attention with our intentions, so that from within we decide what we focus our attention on. And frankly speaking, leadership is very much about our ability to focus collective attention on what truly matters. So today, a leader is not so much the one who tells people what to do or how to do it, but is really the one who can focus the collective attention on what is truly important. But in order to be able to focus collective attention on anything, the first step is to be able to focus our own attention. So mindfulness is the basis. And mindfulness can be described as bringing together three elements. The first one is groundedness. So really being present to our own body, present to our breathing, present to ourselves, being well grounded. Mindfulness is not about escaping reality, it's about being fully grounded in reality. The second one is relaxation. So being mindful is to be grounded and being relaxed, being open, not being tensed or stressed, but really letting go of tensions in body and mind. And the third component is presence, being fully aware. So groundedness, relaxation, and presence, if we cultivate these three attributes, we come to a genuine ability of mindfulness. And this mindfulness allows us to develop emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has 5 major components. The first one is self-awareness, self-knowledge, including awareness of our own emotions, including awareness of our strengths and weaknesses. As we know, all wisdom tradition of the world have put self-knowledge at the very core of human development. But self-knowledge requires that we stop, slow down, look inward, and become aware of what is happening within ourselves. So that's the first component. And in turn, this will allow for self-transformation, self-management. And the two fundamental aspects is to learn to deal with painful, difficult emotions, such like anger or greed or depression or jealousy. So how do we transform painful emotion, difficult emotion? And the second aspect is how do we learn to cultivate consciously positive states of mind, such as generosity, gratitude, kindness, compassion. And these are competencies that can be consciously trained and generate positive emotions. So that's self-transformation, self-management. And this in turn will allow us to develop the third ability, which is social awareness, empathy, compassion. Our ability to feel what other people feel, to understand what other people think, and to understand and be able to act according to other people's needs. So it has the threefold dimension: a cognitive one, understand other people's thinking; an emotional one, feeling other people's emotions; and an active one, meeting other people's needs. And social awareness will lead us to create good, strong, lasting, trustful human relationships, which are the very foundation of happiness and well-being. We know from all research, especially I would like to point out at the Harvard Grant studies that was conducted over several decades, that clearly showed that the quality of human relationship is the most important determinant for happiness and well-being. So creating good human relationship, and friendship and love can be learned, can be taught, can be practiced. And this finally will lead us to ethical and responsible decision-making processes. And this is what we need to meet the challenges of our time. So to summarize, we need to develop 3 dimensions. The first one is living in harmony with ourselves, which will be possible through self-knowledge and self-transformation. The second one is living in harmony with others and with society, which is developed through social awareness and relationship building. And the last one, and today maybe the most important one, living in harmony with nature and with the planet. And as Dr. Samdut pointed out, we are in a very dire situation. And if we don't learn and teach the coming generation to live in harmony with nature and with the planet, we will face major difficulties. And so this third dimension is fueled by making responsible ethical dimensions. So we have implemented this kind of programs in several businesses. I just came back from Vietnam, where we have implemented it with a company called BITIS. It's the largest shoe producer in Vietnam with over 10,000 workers. We have done that for the 3 past years, and we have used the Gross National Happiness Index to measure the progress of the company. And even though it was COVID time, it was amazing to see how by implementing this kind of measures, this kind of framework, the company could really survive the very difficult time of the COVID pandemic, and even increased both in terms of well-being of their staff, and also even in terms of financial revenues. So it means that we can see from experience that implementing happiness and well-being in a company is not only good for the people, for the environment, but it's even good for business. And I think that's a very important message. So I think my time is up. And I would like to conclude with that. And I'm happy to share some more documents if there's interest for that, for instance, about the BT's measurements and so on. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. You are, for me, an inspiration always. You come with so much of learning. You also bring home to us to understand what really we need to do in this very situation of ours. How can we help the individual and the organization at large to come to a very harmonious setting, so that we can have a better, not only life per se, but a bit better existence for the 3 connects that you brought, trying to build self with self, self with others, and self with the nature. Definitely, these are so very important factors for our own existence. And thank you for bringing home to us about the different practices that's been done through the Geneva University research that you have worked on. You brought in very clearly 5 areas how we could really roll into to see, really go deeper into these areas for developing the research work. And thank you also for bringing the concept of mindfulness, which actually we do understand, but we, maybe to a very flimsy level. And you went so deep in very short period of time to tell us what is it all about. And thank you all for also connecting us with the emotional intelligence from the perspective of mindfulness, because what we know is from the psychological perspective, and you brought out so beautifully the 5 areas how we could really learn from the perspective of mindfulness. This is not the end, it's just the beginning of our discussions. And I know that we will have opportunity after all the 3 panelists would have spoken to break into more discussions with questions from myself, from other panelists, and as well as also the research scholars and friends from all over the world who have joined us today. So with this, let me thank you all for your generous time. And like I said, we'll come back to you. But now let's continue with our next presenter, our next panelist, Dr. Srihari Krishna. I'll make a very short presentation so that we don't lose a lot of time. But of course, it is not a good thing to do that, because we leave a lot of great personality behind. But nevertheless, let me just thank Dr. Hari for his time here. Dr. A. Srihari Krishna is a pan-India trainer in executive coaching and a professor in finance and economics for around 3 decades now. Additionally, his work experience cuts across research and consulting with exposure to industry. He has been a guest on live shows on regional satellite TV channels on business and economy in India. He holds dual master's degree in business administration as well as in finance and accounting, and a PhD in commerce with finance. Has a very strong background. He started his career as a journalist in tracking global capital and currency markets, then became a research analyst in a merchant bank and joined GE, and as a senior manager, trained underwriters on fraud and risk management across India and partner sites in the US. In 2011, he became a freelance conducting workshops for civil servants, faculty of reputed institutions, and the corporate world at all levels of management and execution. He served as an advisor and a visiting professor of many famous institutes and universities in and outside India. He was also a case writer for higher education. Currently, he's serving the Assam Kaziranga University in Jorhat as registrar and the professor. With this very short introduction, may I now invite Dr. Srihari to kindly take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you for that elaborate introduction. A very warm welcome to all the participants, very specifically Dr. Rekhi sir, as well as Professor Manas Mandal, and all the friends whom I have made while I was at IIT Kharagpur. This is Dr. Srihari Krishna, and I'm speaking on behalf of Ananda Rekhi Centre for Happiness at the Assam Kaziranga University. Before I start my presentation, I would like to mention that work had definitely been a major source of satisfaction in my life. For me, work is life, and for me, life is work. My workstation is my PlayStation. But in spite of that, I was put through a lot of stress in the last 3 decades. So I want to share my personal experiences regarding how stress has been created, or how I have applied my own techniques of mindfulness to deal with the situation. I started my career as a business journalist, but I was not good at writing. And that was in 1993. Larry Page did not even think of Google. So you can imagine, I didn't have access to content, but every week I was supposed to write 4 pages of content at a time when I was not good at writing. So one day I talked to my boss and said, why did you hire me when you know that I'm not good at writing? Because I was so stressed. Then my boss told me, we tried with people who are good in English, but they didn't have business sense. But you have tremendous business sense, but you are not good at writing. He said, it's okay, we'll give you enough time. But I was so stressed. And unfortunately, we didn't even have a language editor. 45,000 copies were printed every month. I was so tense to doing my job. So the first time when we had a language editor, the language editor looked at my content and said, what is this? What is this nonsense that you have written? And mind you, the same person in less than 6 months told me, if you write like this, we have to find another job. So that was my involvement in the activity in my workplace. I made it possible that I don't make mistakes, and I wrote so well that today I get pleasure. I relax when I write, and I've written more than 500 cases for ICFI. Caselets, I mean, not case studies, caselets, 2-3 pages caselets. So what created stress at one point of time had actually become a relaxation for me at another point of time. Subsequently, I joined as a research analyst, but I was more of a day trader and also a research analyst. Day trader means you can imagine stock prices keep on fluctuating every second. It's a high adrenal activity. I was fairly good at understanding business, but trading is not what is my area of strength. A trader reacts to the situation, whereas a research analyst studies the companies. So the reason for my stress in that particular role was because of the fact that my ability to analyze companies is a stumbling block. So there were times when I used to lose money. I developed a technique of mindfulness there. Mindfulness, as you all know, is all about being in the present, not getting worried about the past or worrying about the future. So essentially, I developed a technique there. For those who are not familiar with trading, I'll just brief you in just a couple of minutes so that you get the background in which I used to operate. Despite being a double degree, master's degree holder in all these things, when you are a trader, nothing comes to mind. You're supposed to react, and that was very difficult for me. So what I did, I developed one mindful technique. I used to start with one share, buy one share, sell one share. So in this trading, you actually do buying and selling. Every day I used to start with only one share. If I make money in that, I used to do 100 shares. If I make money, I used to do 1,000 shares. Subsequently, my next trade would be 10,000 shares. But as a matter of discipline, I never, ever traded beyond 10,000 shares. That was my first mindful technique. Second, whenever I lose, I'll go back one step. That means if I lose at 10,000, my next trade will be 1,000. If I lose at 1,000, I'll get back to 100. If I lose at 100, that means 3 back-to-back wrong trades. I simply stop trading for the day. And I don't feel ashamed to tell you, when the trading starts at 9:30, before 9:35 itself, I made a series of mistakes. And I just resisted my temptation to put in any more trades for the day. Until 2:30, I should simply watch the screen. Whatever may be my temptation, I never ever put in further trade. But generally, just to give you a backdrop, people who trade, if they lose at 10,000, they put the next trade at even 20,000 odds. So there is no way that anybody could have controlled their mind. But I controlled my mind by ensuring that I come down one level. 3 levels, if when I come down, I stop the trading for the day and I'll just watch. I'll try to understand. And sometimes when I can't live with that, I used to do research. Actually, I was hired to be a research analyst, which involves a lot of thinking, meeting people, trying to understand how value is created in business. But being a lean organization, we were also supposed to do the trading. Trading required a left brain thinking, whereas probably research required a right brain thinking. And you cannot apply both of them simultaneously. As they say, the best sign of intelligence is the capability to hold 2 contradictory opinions in one's head at the same time and still be able to function. I was not that intelligent. Hopefully one day I'll become that intelligent. So when I was trading, initially I used to lose money because I used to think Tata Steel, making steel and selling at this price. I could not accept that, and steel down, stock prices can go up. Then I realized when we are trading, we are not supposed to think. We are only supposed to react to the situation. But when I do research, I only think and I don't react. So that was a mindful technique that I have applied. I forgot to mention, as a journalist, I used to have a different relaxation technique. I should solve crossword. But now, in the role of star and I hope none of my colleagues are watching this program. I do Sudoku. The Assam Tribune gives a 4x3 Sudoku, that is 12 numbers, which is very tough, which takes 8 to 10 man hours, but it comes only on Sunday. Throughout the week, I try to do once in a while. Whenever I'm stressed, I look at it. I try to forget about everything because the moment I look at a 4x3 Sudoku, it keeps me focused in the present. Let me quickly run through the pitch because I prepared something just to, stay focused on what I'm talking. Otherwise, I'm most likely to, be more wavered. Generally, we tend to believe that a happy workplace is something which can be either stressful, peaceful, or restful. I was privileged to train, organizations in the public sector. They are very much at peace. They are very much at rest. So I think it is an ownership structure also that matters. The line of business activity. If you see all the top 500 most preferred employers in the world, the top 10 is dominated by technology sector. So possibly it is the line of business which actually dictates whether the work can be peaceful or otherwise. Position in the hierarchy, as Jack Welch says, you're always lonely at the top. The higher the position, the situation. So you are most likely to be vulnerable when you are at the top. The role of the employee, as I have mentioned, I got into a role which I was not comfortable with, and that's precisely the reason when I was a journalist, I was more at stress. Similarly, the vintage of the organization. If you are new to the system, if you are new to the role, if you are new to the organization, you are most likely to be at stress. But all said and done, it is humor which keeps the employees engaged. I make it a point to be very humorous with my team all through, so that whatever may be the situation, we are a bit more relaxed. But happiness actually enhances the performance and productivity. So I hope you are able to see me as well as my screen.
Yes, Dr. Hari, we are able to see your screen, but sometimes your voice is breaking off and on. But I think we are making sense from the broken pieces. But please go ahead. Okay. You would have another 6-7 minutes to wrap up.
Sure. So basically, we are in an attention economy where we are required to stay focused and have that awareness also 24/7, because jobs have become more demanding. But honestly, if you see our biological system, it is not designed to be active for 8 hours, and that is why we require break. And when we take these breaks at regular intervals, we are trying to regenerate our bodies. Mindfulness is something which has to be practiced because it is not about living life in slow motion, but being aware and being awake at all times. Basically, we need to be non-judgmental while we are in the present. We need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to be sensitive to the thoughts and feelings, and we should also be sensitive to what is happening outside. So we need to live in the present, and we should be on autopilot. Most of our habits are atomic habits. We don't even apply our mind when we are doing whatever we are doing. So because we are not present mindfully, we are not operating at an whenever we are doing. So basically, we can look at the mindful work, mindful leadership, and mindful mind, which helps us to stay in the present and contribute significantly. Mindful work deals with being conscious about what you are doing while you are doing. It is the ability to manage our mental and emotional state and increase focus and awareness. And in the process, we will decrease the stress also. So we should try to create that mindful work. And people who have mastered this art, they become mindful leaders, Mindful leadership is all about being present and being resilient. When we say resilient leaders, they are the ones who work on themselves before they work on others. It is very easy to be tough with others. In fact, most of the leaders whom we see, they are tough with others. They are not tough with themselves. But resilient leadership demands being tough with yourself before you are tough with others. Similarly, the resilient leaders also sustain their energy levels under pressure so that they can cope with disruptive changes and adapt themselves to the situation. We have seen Virat Kohli, we have seen Dhoni, as well as Rohit Sharma, miserably failing in their attempt to breathe life into their franchise. But Hardik Pandya has proved beyond a shadow of doubt how a person with responsibility also can still be thickly engaged and remain mindful of what's happening. So the core of mindfulness is about focus and awareness. Focus is the ability to concentrate on what in the moment. Awareness is all about recognize unnecessary distractions. If you are focused and having awareness in both work and in life, we will benefit significantly because we will be more productive. Our decision making can get more return because of people at the workplace, those in a responsible position or those who would like to hold responsible positions. So
Hello. Dr. Hari, you finished? Hello. I think there is a connectivity issue.
Yes. No. It got muted by default. I think when it got reconnected, it got muted by default. Okay. Basically, the mind is always looking for.
Okay. Please conclude.
Basically, the mind by default looks for those low energy activities which do not require too much of our attention. So by default, people think that relaxation means going through our mobile, looking at our mobile, sending messages to our friends, or looking at WhatsApp. That's not relaxation. Relaxation is something else. Let me share the screen once again because it got disconnected. Relaxation is basically a pleasant activity that makes you calm and less worried. This is not possible when we are watching television, when we look, because our life revolves around three screens. Either it is a television screen, or it's a mobile screen, or it is a laptop screen. In a screened life, so to really relax, we should be away from all these gadgets. I've seen many people going for a walk even during the serious activity. In fact, in GE, we have this practice of meeting rooms where there are no chairs. People do generally stand and speak at length. People have carry one ping pong ball and keep playing with it, and still they'll be able to stay focused. So there are different relaxation techniques.
Dr. Srihari, can you please wrap up because we have exceeded time? Hello. Hello. Dr. Srihari, can you wrap up, please? We have exceeded the time. Hello. Orji, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, there was some connectivity problem. Please continue, sir. I'm done. Thank you one and all for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Professor Srihari. Thank you for your time. I really love the experiences that you shared. Most importantly, something that really flew into my heart and mind was attention economy. I think this is, it's a beautiful term, and I think we should do a lot of research in these areas. How can we build this economy so that it can be beneficial for leaders, for workers, for everybody? Thank you for making life as a work and work as a life, which I suppose is another level of mindfulness altogether. And I hope that we learn from these kind of things, that we become better and more mindful people on our journey of life. With this, I am really grateful, Professor Krishnan Srihari. Now I take the opportunity to introduce our third and final speaker on the panel, Dr. Richa Chopra. She served as the founding head of the Contemplative and Behavioral Sciences in Srihari University and synthesized an ecosystem permeating multiple traditions to infiltrate and gradually weave psychological mindfulness into the theories of esoteric, combining Oriental and Occidental wisdom. She has been a forerunner in ideating, executing, and establishing a plethora of departments and global initiatives, steering over 46 collaborative projects with various UN and government agencies. She has been core working member for National Assessment and Accreditation Center towards developing the Yoga Accreditation Framework for HIS, launched at the UN headquarters in 2019. Forgive me. She is on the advisory panel for the national international committees pertaining to contemplative and yoga psychology, spirituality, and others. Dr. Chopra has curated and organized the annual series of Atma Nirbhara Bharat faculty development program on Indian knowledge system, and has conceptualized and directed 13-episode TV series on yoga sparkling within for Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation, launched in June 2015. As a senior Art of Living International faculty, she brought transformation, in lives of people in 11 countries through the Happiness Program and other higher level courses on yoga and meditation. She just joined the team of IKS IIT Kharagpur. The floor is yours, Dr. Chopra.
Namaste to everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
I'm extremely thankful to all the organizers at the Rekhi Centre of Excellence for the Science of Happiness at IIT Kharagpur and Ranchi. I am Ranchi, and the Partha Ghosh Academy, and to all the esteemed audience who have joined. Yes, am I audible? Yes. Cannot hear you, Dr. Sandhu. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
ma'am, you are audible.
Yes. So currently I'm in the Himalayas and in a place called Pangot, and you can see the valley and the mountains behind, and this is something which is a must for relaxation and mindfulness. So I thought that the topic that has been given today is extremely meaningful to all of us, starting with the individual in me. So extremely thankful to all this, both the speakers who spoke before me, bringing in such vast perspectives from various fields of their own experiences. I would like to go a little deeper, starting with the story. I like to convey knowledge through stories, if that is fine with everyone, because I feel it is very relatable. And this whole domain of mindfulness and relaxation starts with each one of us as an individual. So the story is said to be a story that Swami Vivekananda has demonstrated. And it is a story about a big tree that was in a jungle, and the tree was felled. once the tree was felled, the stump of the tree remained. So the stump of the tree remained and life continued the way it was. So after the stump of the tree remained, in the evening, a group of children came to that jungle, and as they would come every evening, and when they saw the stump of the tree, it was becoming evening, it was there was not much sun, they mistook it for a ghost. So probably they had some idea of a ghost, which they had learned, they would have read in their storybooks, and they thought that the stump of the tree is a ghost, and they just ran away. After some time, in that same jungle, came a thief who was wanting to escape the policeman, and he saw the stump of the tree, and he thought that it is the policeman instead of the stump of the tree, and he ran in the opposite direction. After some time, the policeman who was looking for the thief, he came running in that direction, and thinking the stump to be the thief, he mistook it. He thought that that is the thief. And this is how it proceeded. So the children thought it was a ghost, and the policeman thought that it was a thief, and the thief thought that it was a policeman. And finally came a man who had no conceptions, no perceptions in his mind, and he was absolutely in the present moment. He saw the stump of the tree as a stump of the tree, and he sat there and he really enjoyed his evening. So why I'm quoting this story is that the way we perceive things has a lot to do with our thoughts and our emotions. Yes. So each one of them had different thoughts and emotions, and that is how they started perceiving the stump of the tree. So when we talk of mindfulness, it simply means is just to be in the present moment, just to be completely aware of one's thought, to be completely aware of one's emotions, to be completely aware of all the sensations that is happening in one's body, to be completely aware of what is happening around me, and to be able to see things the way they are and not being colored by virtue of one's emotions or thoughts, which seem to create a different kind of a perception. So when we talk of mindfulness, it is very important to first understand what the mind is. Now, mind has many, many definitions, many definitions. It's an abstract concept. It cannot be pinned. For example, if I ask, where are your eyes? One can easily say, okay, these are my eyes. Where is your nose? One can easily say, this is my nose. And if I ask you, where is your mind? It's impossible to pin down where this mind is, but we all have a mind. It is all over our body. It's like a field of energy, but it's very difficult to pin where the mind is. Now, when we talk of mindfulness, it is again important to understand what the mind is. If you're not able to pin the mind and everything is about the mind, then how do we understand what the mind is? Simple way to understand the mind is, for example, many a times we have had this experience that we have something right in front of us and we are not able to see it. Yes, because the eyes are not enough to see. It is the mind behind the eyes that helps us to see. Many a times we think that we are hearing, but we simply do not hear what has been said because the mind was not there. So it is the mind that functions through the eyes, and thus we start to see things. Looking becomes seeing only when the mind becomes functional with the eyes. We pay attention through the eyes, and then we start to see things, and that is how we start to hear. So mind is a perceptive faculty within us through which we understand the world through the five senses. Now, in the Yoga Sutras, it is one of the oldest texts of the yogas in the yoga school from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. It talks about the mind having three important functions. One is the manas. That is the mind that works through the senses. The way I just said, when we see things, it happens when we have the mind along with the eyes. That is the manas. Now, whatever information enters inside us by virtue of the manas, that discerning ability becomes the buddhi. If I see a beautiful flower, I see the flower by virtue of my eyes and the mind. Now, whether the flower is very beautiful, it is very fragrant, it is this discerning ability is the buddhi. And when I start associating this with my I-ness, it becomes the ahamkar. So this is what the mind is. This is how we understand the mind, by virtue of its the senses, the manas, the buddhi, and the ahankar. And it is a field of energy. Now, how do we come to that state of mindfulness? How do we come to that state of relaxation? That can only happen when we understand that the nature of mind is jumpy. Yes, so the mind has a very unique characteristics, that it is either in the past or it is either in the future. We have all observed, if we see our own mind, I'm sure everybody will agree that even now, right this moment, the mind may not be here. It may be in the past or it may be in the future. That is the characteristics of the mind. So what is yoga? What is yoga? Yoga is basically to have the cessation of all the modulations of the mind. So it is said in the Yoga Sutra that the mind has modulations, and these modulations are called vrittis. These modulations are called vrittis. There is a shloka in the Yoga Sutras in the first chapter. It is vrittayaha panchatayaha klishta aklishta. It says that there are 5 modulations of the human mind, and these modulations of the human mind can be problematic or it can be non-problematic. See, this knowledge was given almost 5,000 years back. And what are these modulations of the mind? It is pramana. It is viparyaya. Viparyaya is wrong knowledge. Pramana is the logical ability. Pramana. And then we have vikalpa, the imagination that we have. We imagine so many things in our mind. And then we have the modulation of smriti, mind going to the past, and the modulation of nidra. Nidra is also a modulation. So 5 modulations of the human mind. And what is yoga? Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is what? It is chitta. Chitta is the complete consciousness which encompasses the mind. In that chitta, when these modulations are seized, when they are arrested, when they are restrained, that is what is yoga. So the relaxation, the ability to become focused, the ability to become mindful in the present moment, that can happen through the practice of yoga. So this entire philosophy and practice of yoga, many people think that yoga is just to do with the asanas. It is not that. Yoga is the science of the mind, and very beautifully, with all the methodicity, it really gives us a step-by-step guideline as to what the mind is, what are the vicissitudes of the mind, how does the mind behave, and how can we calm the mind. And there are a variety of techniques that help us to calm the mind and still the mind so that we can go beyond the mind. When we are able to go beyond the mind, that is the time we become so clear in our perception, then only the mindfulness starts to happen. Otherwise, these undercurrents of the mind, the vrittis, doesn't allow us to be mindful. And what are the techniques? We are all talking about becoming mindful, but how do we do it? Everybody wants to be mindful and aware and happy and centered, but how do we do it? So the techniques are beautifully given in the Yoga Sutra. And of course, the time is very, very, very small. But yes, we have all heard of techniques such as the pranayam through the breath. The breath and the mind are connected. We have seen that when we become angry, our breath becomes fast. When we are sad, our breath becomes very, very shallow. So the breath has to do a lot with our mind. So there is a secret in the breath through which the mind can be brought to the present moment. And that is all contained in the pranayama. It has its own, it's oceanic. And then we have meditation. That is another way to bring the mind to the present moment, to transcend the mind, to become a witness to one's own thought. Even that is mindfulness. The very fact that I am able to see my own thoughts, the very fact that I am able to understand the contents of my own mind means I am not the mind. So this distance of me from my own mind That is yoga. So a vast number of techniques are there, and all of these helps us to really understand our own modulations, the vritti, and how to transcend the vrittis so the mind becomes like a clear lake and we can see the truth of who we really are. We can have the abhas, the anubhuti of the divinity that is there within us. That is yoga. And Patanjali, yoga is not about union, it is about viyoga, the separation of the Purusha from the Prakriti. So I just wanted to give a small idea of how this entire science of the mind is well contained in the Yoga Sutras, and how each one of us can become self-counselors by really understanding this philosophy, and then its application to start applying this knowledge on ourselves first. If each one of us start becoming mindful, a yogi radiating happiness, a lot of things in our workplace can change just by virtue of my positivity. So the responsibility starts from me. Yes. So with this, I would like to end my talk. This was just a teaser that yes, the science of mind can be well understood. It is very much there in the Yoga Sutras, and it needs that effort to go through the text. It needs a teacher to help us really understand. And yes, very, very important, the practice part is the responsibility of each one of me, that in our workplace, whatever we do, in all our relations, workplace, there is going to be vicissitudes, there is going to be difference, but something which I could have a complete hold is through understanding my own mind, culturing it. But how to do it, that practice is very important. Yoga is not a talk. It is not a debate, I would say. It is not about, it is something which needs to be practiced. It is something that each one of us needs to dive in to really understand what our mind is and what are the vicissitudes and how does the mind work and how do I really curate my mind to come back to my center so that I become a sakshi, I become a drishta of my own thoughts, of my own emotions. And instead of succumbing to that, I start to respond. I start to handle them and with ease. And there are a lot of techniques. It's an ocean. It's an ocean. But yes, the whole purpose of today was to just have an introduction that curating my mind, understanding my mind, and being stable is possible for each and every one of us. This is my lived experience also. Thank you so much once again for this. Namaste.
Thank you, Professor Chopra. It's so enlightening to understand just through that little story about the perception of our minds, how it works. But something that you mentioned, mind is a field of energy. And I think that's what we will debate and discuss, not debate, discuss more about it at a later point of time. But thank you so much for mentioning that yoga is not something to be taught or discussed or debated. It's to be brought into oneself, to be practiced so that our mind can be itself the drishti and the sakshi. Thank you for saying that. And the West always thinks that yoga is something like very acrobatic. And now we understand the definition of yoga, I think, much better. And we also learn that yoga is not just the science of understanding, is a science to be practiced and to be with it. With this, I really thank you for your time from the mountains that you are. We didn't spare you, but you brought so much of knowledge for all of us that are here today listening to you. With this, now we break into some question answer sessions. I would be asking questions in sequence. So I'll begin with Dr. Tho, then come to Dr. Srihari, then to Dr. Richa Chopra, and then I will have another question. The fourth question will be a common question that I would ask all of you to contribute to it. And So we'll continue that until another 30 minutes almost. And then we will open the floor for discussion, or we open the floor for question and answer from our participants. If you agree on that, let me begin asking this question to Dr. Tho Vinh. Science says mind is divided into two parts: store consciousness or subconsciousness, and consciousness. Our belief and perceptions seem to arise from them, make our own reality from different beliefs. My question is, what is real? What is true? And how mindfulness can help connect the two dots to realize a better industry? Thank you, Auto. You can just jump in to answer this.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Samdu. Can you hear me well?
Yes, very well.
Okay.
But I don't see you.
Well,
It's visible.
my camera is on.
Did somebody do something? Yeah, okay, great. Now I see everybody.
Okay. Yes. So I would like to relate. So what you've mentioned is very much based on the Buddhist understanding of the so-called eight consciousness, and I would like to relate it to the Western psychological understanding of the mind, which started, you know, with Sigmund Freud and then Carl Gustav Jung and others. And what all these researchers have in common is that they showed that there are three, I mean more, but the three fundamental levels. The first one is the so-called conscious mind, which is, you know, what we live in our daily life. And the second one is the subconscious or pre-conscious. So Freud usually says pre-conscious mind. And then you have the unconscious mind, which would be equivalent to store consciousness, alaya vijnana in the Buddhist tradition. And so our daily experience, our normal experience, happens in the level of the conscious mind. But the conscious mind is very much biased. And the example that Dr. Chopra gave is a very good example of the way our conscious mind is biased by our thoughts, feelings, expectation, and past experiences. Now, the subconscious mind or pre-conscious mind is the field of emotions. And one important dimension of emotional intelligence and also of mindfulness is to, in a way, lower so imagine that the mind is like an iceberg and you only have a small part of the mind that emerges, that's the conscious. And then there's the water, if you want, and then under the water, the first level is the subconscious mind or the pre-conscious mind. And most of our emotions and prejudices and bias that come from our past experiences and biography, they happen at that level of the subconscious mind, but it can be made conscious. And this is what mindfulness also is about, to really lower the threshold of consciousness so that we become more aware of all these bias, prejudices, unconscious feelings and emotions that are actually coloring our perception of reality in the way that Dr. Chopra described very clearly. And so that self-awareness is about lowering so that there's a better understanding, better perception of all these elements that are actually distorting our experience. And then you have a third level, which is much deeper, which the Western psychology called the unconscious, and Freud thinks that the conscious cannot be directly experienced. But of course, in Eastern tradition, both yoga and Buddhist tradition, we know that through meditation, we can access this deeper layer of consciousness, which is what also Dr. Chopra described as beyond the mind, a field beyond the mind that can be witness to the mind. But that, of course, is not necessarily what you will address in the business context, because this is almost like spiritual, mystical experience. But what we can really address in the business context, in the workplace situation, is to become more aware of our emotional prejudices, emotional bias, so that we can create a field of common understanding, which is much deeper. And I go back to the two first dimension that I mentioned as very important for a good workplace situation, which is, first of all, emotional security, so that we have a common understanding. So some very simple practices that we introduce in businesses is that at the beginning of every meeting in a business setting, we encourage the people to have 2 minutes of mindfulness, 2 minutes of silence, very short. Just come back to the breathing, come back to the sensation in the body, just feel, how do I feel right now? And then have a quick checking in the round. So if each one just shares how I feel right now, what are my emotions, my sensations. And this creates, it can be done in 5 minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time. But then this allows for the meeting to happen at a very different level, because we know what the energy is that is in the room. Or if somebody comes with maybe they have a big problem at home or personal problem, if they can just share that, oh, sorry, I might not be, very joyful today, or you might feel that I'm distracted, but actually I'm worried for my old mother or for my child. And then, everybody will feel very compassionate and won't get upset about this person. So you see, very simple little techniques like that enable us to create a field of common understanding that goes beyond the just superficial mind, where we just share information and data and objectives and things like that, and create this kind of emotional security context that allows for people to feel much more at ease and work in a more productive way together.
Wow. Thank you, Auto. I mean, you are there very much. It sounds so very simple, mindfulness with so little an input. One can come to a platform where we hang everything and be present. I mean, such little things matter most, but we take it so hard. I think mindfulness, when you ask people, they say, oh, I have no time for mindfulness. And I think they think that mindfulness is to sit for hours together and just do meditation. So thank you for opening this up. My next question is to Professor Srihari Krishna. In industries, one has to go along with his goals, which is highly profit-driven or oriented. It pushes people towards it. How can mindfulness help them evolve out of such frame of mind? Of course, you gave a lot of examples, but if you could concretize all that you talked about, your stories, that would be wonderful.
Basically, I think, when we are a professional, and, if you look at the bigger purpose, which McKinsey's 7S framework talks about, shared values, when we look much beyond ourselves, when Dr. Richa has mentioned about being meaningful and purposeful. So I think in the context of an organization, when you look at the bigger picture, you will surrender yourself. You will not think about you. You'll think about the impact that you create in that particular role. So essentially, when you are not connected with the outcome, you put in your best effort. Like, there is a shloka in Bhagavad Gita, which I would like to recite. Like, one is that karmanyevadikarasya ma phaleshu kathachana ma karma phala hedurbhu mate sangosta karmani. But more important than that, it says, Dhyayato Vishyan Pumsah Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha Kama Krodho Vijayate Krodad Bhavati Sammoha Sammoha Smriti Vibhramaha Smriti Bhramsa Buddhinaso Buddhinasat Pranasyati. How that mental balance gets disturbed because we are obsessed with certain things. Be it in business or be it in sports. Why many people get out at 90s, the nervous 90s? Because the batsman is not focused on the game. The batsman is looking at the scoreboard. The scorekeeper will do his job. We don't need to worry about it. But the moment you get into the 90s, after every run, the batsman keeps on looking at the scoreboard. It is this distraction which makes them lose focus on the game, and that is how they throw their wicket very cheaply. Life also, but too many demands. I think irrespective of the role that we play, we should believe that we are an instrument of God. Our body has got certain role to play during our lifetime. And I think if our thoughts are pure, if there is convergence between our thought, speech, and action, which Gandhiji says is actual happiness. If there is convergence in our thoughts, speech, and action, we'll be truthful, we'll be transparent. And I think if these two traits are displayed, the team binding strong, as tough with my team, I think everybody would appreciate. And that is why it is very much possible to meet the targets or exceed the expectations of any stakeholders. In the corporate life, we need to showcase this, and we need to operate with a certain degree of detachment in whatever we do without really bothering about the end result, put in the best effort. I think while we live in our own world of reality, still whatever may be the consequences, whatever may be the outside world, it is dipping into our innate strength that allows us to give our best. Otherwise, people are carried away by how much salary other people are getting, what kind of privileges other people are getting, why we are not eligible for that. So you can think of so much of organizational politics which will not allow you to put your best foot forward. But once we realize that we are just an instrument in the hands of God, during our lifetime, we can make an impact. We can touch so many lives with all the good things that we do. I think the best will come automatically. We don't need to make a conscious effort to do that. It will come automatically. Somebody was asking me in the chat box that can we do multitasking and still be mindful? It is very difficult. I wouldn't say it is impossible, but it is very difficult to do multiple things simultaneously and still be mindful about it, because whenever we are thinking, our energy is getting diluted or our energies are spread thin and wide. I would like to give an example of what Ulrich and Jack Trout say in the book titled Focus. He says that the sun is the most powerful element in the solar system. Sun releases billions of watts of energy every second. Actually, if you can tap 1 second of solar energy, the whole world can operate all gadgets for 1 full year or more than that without switching it off. But so sun, despite being so powerful, cannot do anything to you. You can wear goggles, or if you're like me, you can wear a hat, and in the process you can protect yourself. But look at laser rays. Laser rays are so weak, but still you can perform a surgery to the womb without cutting the body. Laser rays, because they are focused, they are useful. Solar energy, because it is spread thin and wide, it will not be able to do what laser rays can do. So mindfulness, if you are focused, you will be able to achieve the target very easily, or you can complete the task quickly. When you are doing multiple tasks, you are actually not operating at an optimal level. But we don't have that luxury in the corporate world. We need to look at so many things, but the bottom line is we are not as effective as we could have otherwise been had we taken up one task at a time.
Thank you, Professor Srihari. That's nice. That's great. You mentioned that don't look for the outcome, but be in the process, which is very commendable. And you also said that there must be convergence with thoughts, your actions, without really looking into what the outcome of the deeds are, and also to operate from a very detached perspective, from a detached part of one's journey in life. And you talked very well about how focus can be developed through mindfulness, like the rays that you just spoke about. So thank you very much. The
I would
laser
like to take 1 more minute, Sandhu, once.
Yes.
Since I did mention about the mindful technique, which I applied as a trader, many people used to laugh at me because sometimes my day used to end in few minutes of trading. I never used to do anything. I used to simply watch the screen. Many people used to laugh at me that, you're losing a lot of opportunities when you are, because of your, stupid thought process. You made this commitment that 3 times back to back, if you're wrong, you should come out of the trading desk for the day. I survived the worst market carnage when Sitaram Keshri has pulled down the Gowda government, where the markets are tanked and many traders were wiped. I survived that because of my tech. I thought that this is not my day. 3 back-to-back wrong decisions, fine. We should come out of it. We should accept we are not good at whatever we were doing today. So let us stay away. That's it.
Thank you. Maybe we will continue for another 10-15 minutes, and we will open the floor for others. I prepared like 15 questions, and I know that we cannot get through all this, but something that I would like to ask Professor Chopra is, referring to Bruce Lipton, who is a genetic scientist. He says we are a community of cells, and they are programmed by the environment around us. As we are rituals being in the body, creating the world we want. The combined forces of all human on earth with so much of spiritual energy could change the entire consciousness of the planet. Knowing this, how can we as individuals and industries make people practice love, compassion, peace, and joy through mindfulness? Some examples would be very desirable. Thank you.
Thank you for this very beautiful question as to how can we have individuals on this planet practice peace, love, joyfulness, and that transposes to whatever we do, whether it is the industry or our homes. Again, it begins with me. I'll start with a small story again. I'm very fond of stories. So there was a grandfather and a grandson, and they were both walking by the seashore. And when the wave comes, thousands of starfish come on the seashore. And if they are not thrown back into the water, they will eventually die. So this young child, he picks one starfish and he throws it into the sea. He takes the second, he throws it into the sea. He takes the third and he throws it into the sea, and the grandfather watches. He says, there are thousands of them. It's not going to make a difference to anyone. The grandchild was smarter than the grandfather. He takes the fourth one. He says, Grandpa, it's going to make a difference to this one. He takes the fifth and he says, it's going to make a difference to this one. So why I'm hinting at the story is, again, I repeat from my talk that I just gave a few minutes back, is if each one of us take on to this responsibility to be really happy within us, the world starts to change. And it is not an impossible mission. See, when we were children, all of us, if we just go back, all of us, how were we? So spontaneous, so joyful, so happy, so non-judgmental. We were all that, isn't it? There was no judgment. Yeah? And we were living moment to moment. If somebody slapped us, in that moment we cried, but next moment we were fine. We looked at that person and we didn't even have the memory that this person has slapped me. Let me not talk. And how have we become as adults now? Somebody says something or somebody doesn't say something, but we just perceive something has been said for us. Again, that stump, 3-trump story, and we don't talk to that person. We become so non-spontaneous. So when we have all these kind of emotional struggles inside us by virtue of our perception, by virtue of whatever, there is no question that we can be happy. Let me take another example. I think we can all apply. For example, if I ask you, think of a person whom you do not accept. Let's all think of a person we don't accept. I'm sure we have at least 2 or 3 people we don't accept, or a situation that we don't accept, right? We can think of that. Now, when we don't accept that person or that situation, what are the emotions that come up inside us? Maybe hatred, maybe anger, maybe victimized. All the negative emotions, just by virtue of non-acceptance. And when I say think of a person whom you really accept, could be your mother, could be God, could be anybody. What are the feelings that come inside us? Love, joy, respect. Ask any human being. The first set of emotions wherein you feel victimized, you feel like a culprit, you feel anger, you feel regret. Do you feel good inside you? He will say no. Nobody's happy with those emotions. And ask a person if you have love, joy, peace, expanse, how do you feel? Oh, very good. So there's no human being on this planet who is happy with those set of emotions. Nobody. And it happens because we do not accept things the way they are, people like they are. So we know all these theories. All of us know this. But when it comes to application, we are not even able to apply a drop of it in our lives. Why? Because our investment is not inside, our investment is always outside. How can I reach to the top of my career? How much money can I make? How can I beat this? How many cars I can have? How can I have a big house? Where is the time in the investment that we are making to culture our own mind? My speaker in front of me said that the laser, when it is focused, it can do wonders. The mind that has created the laser, what is the Shakti of that mind? So by virtue of understanding our mind, by virtue of these practices, by virtue of the investment of the time to really understand who am I? Who is in me? Who is watching my mind? There is something in me that is aware of my own mind. There is an awareness. It is consciousness with a capital C, which is beyond my conscious state of waking, which is beyond my sleeping state, and which is beyond my dreaming state. That underlying consciousness is what I am. That is what our scriptures talk about. And that is where we are peaceful. In that state, are we rested? In that state, can we respond? In that state, are we love? In that state, are we joy? And if every human, we go to a sant, a person who's elevated, thousands of people feel so peaceful in just that person's presence. How? He has not given any talk or anything to bring happiness in anything, just by virtue of his presence. If one human being can bring peace to thousands of people, that is only because that person has a very clear mind, a free, error-free perception, beautiful emotions running inside him. And that is what is making all the changes. So it starts with me. Can we take the plunge? Can we take that investment to really become peaceful and joyful and happy the way we were as we were children? And there is a whole science behind it. Yoga is that science. It helps us. Let's invest our time and we'll know how to do it. I'm sure there are other ways also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So there is so much of potential to do research in the yogic part of our existence. And I pick up 3 words: non-acceptance, acceptance, and of course, self-investment. Is it inside or outside? And I think if these very simple things really dawn deep into our minds and heart, into our soul, I think we can make a big, big impact and difference in our own lives and lives of everybody around us. With this, I have one general question for all of you to contribute something towards it, and then we will open it floor for others to ask. And this is, it is said that 95% of our minds, which is, we talk about 2-3 minds now that I realize, including the unconscious mind. But I'm referring to 2 minds, that's the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, subconscious mind or the store mind. 95% of our minds, from the perspective of the subconscious mind, run on autopilot. And by being mindful, we could be more conscious in our thoughts and action. what kind of mindfulness is helpful, because we know there are several types of mindfulness practices that's done around in the world. They even come with advertisement that for health, wealth, happiness, and many other things are to be, garnered with mindfulness or got with mindfulness, which I don't know if that is really true. But my question is really, what kind of mindfulness are we supposed to practice so that we can enhance our conscious mind as opposed to our unconscious mind and become a very creative force with greater intelligence and become a better individual within that organizational frame? So this would be a question for all of you. You can just share your ideas one by one. We start with Dr. Tho, then with Dr. Srihari, and finally with Dr. Richa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samdu. I think it's a very relevant question because there has been a trend, especially also in the West, of what has been called Mac mindfulness, like very superficial, commercialized mindfulness. And also the danger in that is to cut mindfulness away from its spiritual roots. And the spiritual roots of mindfulness are basically ethical roots. So for instance, if you just take mindfulness as focused attention, you might say, let's say, a soldier who's mindful has more chance to kill than the one who's mindless, because he can aim much more precisely, but then is killing someone a mindful action. You see, so it's not enough to define mindfulness as focused attention. Mindfulness is something much broader than that. So I would say, first of all, mindfulness is also mindfulness of interdependence, of interbeing. So it's not just mindfulness of myself. It's mindfulness of our interdependent coexistence or interdependence experience, and that brings in an ethical dimension to mindfulness. So mindfulness is also being mindful of the impact of what I do, for instance. So when we speak about being mindful of our action, it doesn't only mean to be very focused at what I'm doing, because I could be focused on doing something wrong. It's also being mindful of, will my action bring happiness and well-being to self and others, or will my action bring suffering to self and others? So you see, I think it's really important to include an ethical dimension into mindfulness. This is why, as you know, Dr. Samdu, in our Buddhist tradition, we called the precepts mindfulness training. So not killing, not lying, and so on, are called mindfulness trainings, because having an ethical behavior is a manifestation of mindfulness. So I think it's really important to see mindfulness as something much wider, much more comprehensive, as just a technique to focus attention. Is really to use our mind to have a much broader perspective on self and others, and the impact of what we're doing, thinking, feeling, saying on self and others. Maybe so far.
Thank you, Autho. I mean, this is, as much as I'm enjoying, I'm sure, and learning to a greater height, greater depth, I'm sure all the research scholars and participants out there are equally, if not more, learning the mindfulness, the concept, the living with it. And really, because I think we narrow our whole idea of mindfulness is to keep focus on something you do perfectly well, and that can be negative or positive. But yes, unless there is virtues, values, or ethics in it, I think we can always go wrong with mindfulness. That's what comes out very clearly. Thank you. May I request Srihari, sir, to add some more to the question?
My thoughts resonate with Vinh Tho, Doctor. I feel mindfulness is all about being deeply engaged in the present.
Your voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking. Is it audible now?
Yeah, better.
I believe that mindfulness is all about being thickly engaged in the present moment, where we are fully conscious about what we are, how we are, so that we can visualize the impact it is creating. So when we are mindful, we have a tremendous presence of mind. Even if we are not doing something which is, even if we are on the wrong side of the law, we know that, we are very much aware of what we are doing. Two brothers were asked the same question. One of them was asked, why did you become an alcoholic? He says, my father was also an alcoholic. Then they asked their brother, why is it that you are an alcoholic? He says, my father was an alcoholic. So I think both of them knew the fact that their father was an alcoholic, but each one of them had used their own diligence and they behaved differently. Even when in the battlefield of Mahabharata, when Duryodhan goes underneath the water and he has got this capability to remain still underwater, he'll be called to step out of the water, step out of the pond, and he'll be given one last chance. He'll be told, you can fight against one-on-one, you can fight against any of the Pandavas, and if you win, you'll get back your kingdom. So Lord Krishna tells Bhim, Lord Krishna tells Yudhishthir, you are not being mindful. You don't know the capability of Duryodhan. While you were in the forest for 14 years, Duryodhan was practicing so much so that every day, that if you go according to the rules of the game, even Bhim also can be easily defeated. And out of your ignorance, you are not being mindful. You just gave an opportunity to Duryodhan that you can fight against any one of us. So I think being able to visualize the shape of things to come is something which is part and parcel of being mindful, so that you don't regret it a later date. And that is precisely the reason why ethical dimension is going to take a major share of this thought process. It will be dominated by that ethical considerations because of that. Because in hindsight, we don't want to regret that we have committed this act. And that's precisely the reason being mindful is all about visualizing the shape of things to come also, because of the actions that we do today. Like yesterday being the World Environment Day, everybody started saying, unless and until we act today, our future cannot be saved. So the actions that we take up today are going to impact in future. So we need to be mindful of what we are doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Srihari. Visualization, another aspect of mindfulness, comes out very clearly from your stories. Thank you for sharing that. I would now give the floor to Dr. Richa, Professor Richa Chopra, and then we will open for the participants to ask questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhu. So what kind of mindfulness? I was just corroborating it to what kind of things are needed for physical health, for example. Now, all over the world, across different countries, people have different food, different ways of eating food, but we all understand as to what a healthy body is. It doesn't matter whether we eat X or we eat Y, but we generally know that these things when eaten gives us a healthy body. What kind of mindfulness? I do not have an answer to this, because it is all about being spontaneous. It is all about being childlike. It is all about being free from judgment. It is all about having a mind which is free, which is untainted. If I have to ride a cycle, I alone will know how to balance the cycle. So mindfulness for me is each one of us really knowing, am I really balanced inside? Am I really functional the way I could be? Or are my emotions overpowering me? Are my perceptions overpowering me that I'm not able to function properly, that I'm not able to respond to things? So whatever brings us to that center, brings us to that state of calmness, brings us to that state of feeling love and joy, is the best mindfulness practice for that person. Do whatever. But I alone, as a first person inquirer, will know, am I really centered? Am I really peaceful? Am I really calm? Am I judging people? Am I feeling good inside me? If I am in that state, alone can I be aware of everything around me. So it is a state, we all know what the equilibrium is in each one of us. No third person can say. I alone best know. And what will help me to keep myself more and more in that center? I'm not saying that we don't have those vicissitudes or those lines of opposites. That will happen. But how soon can we come back to our natural state, the way we were when we were young? That is what, to me, is mindfulness. It could be different for different people. It doesn't matter. The methodicity could be anything. But the ultimate is, am I a fully functional, happy, joyful, alive human being without any prejudice? Thank you. Your mic is muted, Dr. Sandhu.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Chopra. I think it very well connects with what Dr. Thos mentioned about interdependence and interbeing. When you're connected, that's the state that you just described, and visualizing the future. How are we going to walk from the time we wake up to the time we put our head back onto the pillow? If we can visualize and walk that visualization, I think we can be interdependent, we can be in the interbeing with all the values, all the ethics, and as well as be grounded the way that we would like to be happy, functional, and loved, and loving, and compassionate, and kind. With this, I really would like to thank all the panelists today. And of course, this is building another collaborative approach. If you don't mind, I would, of course, there will be a lot of research scholars who might want to, share their ideas with you, write you questions, and if you don't mind, please bear with them, because you have opened a plethora of ideas, so much to do with mindfulness as individual and in the organization. So please, this would be just the beginning. For example, with Eurasia and maybe our Rekhi Centre here, with Kaziranga, we are somehow connected. And now Dr. Richa is already a part of us, but she comes from a very high order, Sri order, so we could have another connection. So it would be all about collaboration from here on. Thank you so much for making all this time for us. Now I open the floor to the participants. Please ask your questions. You open yourself up and you unmute yourself and you just ask, okay?
Sir, you are muted.
Participants, it's your time now. Please unmute yourself, show your face, ask the question. If you have a direct question to one of the three panelists, do so. If it's a general question, just leave it general, and we know anyone will answer you. Please go ahead. Yes, Sudesh, please unmute yourself, show your face, and ask the question. Yes.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Thanks so much for the wonderful presentations. And my name is Sudesh Pokhrel. I'm from Bhutan as well. I know Dr. Sandhu Chetri personally as well. And allow me to call you out, if you agree, Sir Thoha Vinh, if I may call you out as well. So this question to you, and I wanted to ask you that in terms of your practical experience, from your on-ground experience, in terms of evaluating happiness and well-being in companies on ground, what were the most common problems that you discovered, and through what specific reformation steps were you able to correct it? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. So yes, we have been implementing GNH, or gross national happiness in business, in various companies, both in Asia and also here in Switzerland and Germany. So what we try to do is we look at three different entry points. One is the index itself. You might know that Center for Bhutan Studies and GNH Research has created a specific index called the GNH of Business. So we use that to first measure the baseline of the company. And based on this analysis, we then set priorities, what the company should be focusing their attention on. So that's one aspect, which is the measurement aspect. The second aspect is we work on the mission, vision, and values of the companies and try to help them define behaviors in daily basis that will align with these visions, because the danger is that a company has a mission and a vision and even values, but it's not really the way people are functioning on a daily basis. So we need to clarify what are the behaviors that are aligned with this vision and mission. So that's the second entry point. The third one is we work on developing what we call happiness skills, which is basically mindfulness and social emotional learning within the company, both at employee level, and we call these GNH ambassadors or happiness ambassadors, and then also at management level, because we need to have a management culture that reflects the values that we want to implement in terms of gross national happiness within the company. So it's difficult to say which are the most difficult challenges, because in each company it varies. For instance, the last company I was working with was in Vietnam. It was this shoe company that I mentioned, and there the founder of the company had a very top-down, fear-based management style, and there the biggest challenge was to shift the management style from a top-down, command and control, fear-based management to a trust-based management. Dr. Krishna mentioned resident leadership, leaders and managers that are really attuned with the experiences, the emotions of their staff. So we were working a lot on that. And in this case, that was the major challenge. In other companies, it's more, for instance, the environmental impact of the company that is a major challenge. So with each company, it will vary, but what is really helpful is using the Gross National Happiness Index as a tool to define what are the priorities the company should work on in order to be more aligned with gross national happiness values, which is mindfulness and happiness as the foundation of the corporate culture.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Any other questions, please?
Yeah. May I ask?
Yeah, yes, Satilok, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Sandhu. First of all, thank you very much, all the great panelists today. I learned a lot of things from today's, your talk, and then followed by the question and discussion. I have a very small question, as the title of the talk was Mindfulness and Relaxation at the Workplace. So I was a bit, curious about the relaxation at the workplace. So how can we be relaxed at workplace, as the current situation is very turbulent? Cutthroat competition, coronavirus, various societal issues, and all of these have engrossed us, in how in our unconscious mind we are preoccupied. So how we can, every individual can fight against this one and can give their 100% at workplace with living a relaxed life. So any of the panelists, maybe they can share your thoughts or that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful question, Professor Trilok. I think all of three will be happy to put forward their ideas on how to be happy in a workplace like with present situation. Please go ahead. Starting with Dr. Richa, then maybe Dr. Tho and Dr. Srihari.
Thank you for that lovely question. And I was just reminded that the cutthroat competition and the coronavirus and all those things that seems to make us not relaxed. Actually, if we look at life and just ask ourselves, how long are we going to live on this planet? Let's ask this existential question, how long? And when we know that perhaps it's just another 20, 30, 40 years, then when we have that larger view of life, that we are not even a tiny drop in the ocean, that rat race eases down. Second is when we have fear or competition or jealousies with our colleagues. I know we have to deal with it, but we can deal with it when we are very relaxed and wise. Thirdly, no matter wherever we go on the higher ladder, the person with whom I am jealous or the person who is troubling me, eventually, none of us are going to be there. This is the philosophical idea, but it is a reality. We are all not going to exist on this planet in that same physical form, of course. Life is eternal. So this larger knowledge of life is very, very important to relax for all of us. Secondly, the art and the skill to really be relaxed and happy within. Practice of contentment is very important. See, if we just take our lives a few years back, wherever we are now, we wanted this so badly. Now that this has come, perhaps we are not content. There are another list of things that we are looking for. And we reach there, and again, I tell you, will not be content. There'll be another list of things waiting for us. So the practice of contentment is very important. So two things. One is looking at life from a larger perspective. This is not going to be. Things will change. Things are changing. Second is the art, the way to really be happy from within. It is a practice. It is a responsibility. Nobody can bring me relaxation, I tell you, if my mind is not relaxed. Nobody can do it. So that is why investment in understanding one's own mind, observing what are the things that really worry my mind, like a scientist, and then knowing how to handle one's own mind. If we can invest that much time as a scientist, first person inquirer, kya chal raha hai man mein? Why does these same patterns go on in me? How do I really remove this? Can I have a different way of looking at it? And there are ways. That is why I said our scriptures are full of this knowledge, provided we take the time, not only to theoretically understand, but to really go deeper into it. From your busy time, take out time to meditate. Take out time to learn certain practices. It really helps. And when you are calm, you make an impact on everybody in a very, very big manner. It becomes effortless dynamism. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tho?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Dr. Chopra has already put forward very important dimensions of the answer. I would just like to add one small dimension, which is understanding the functioning of empathy, which is has been now researched in Germany in a scientific way. And the outcome of this research that was done by Professor Tanya Singer is really important to understand this question, which is when we are confronted with suffering, let's say in the world around us, then because we have the ability of empathy, we feel other people's suffering, which is a wonderful ability, of course, but it has a downside. It activates the part of our brain that is activated when we suffer ourselves. Therefore, when we're exposed to too much suffering and times of crisis, for instance, then there is the danger of what is called empathic distress. So actually our empathy turns into something negative, which is like we can be depressed or feel powerless or even go into burnout, right? And that's one of the reasons why many helping professionals tend to have burnout, because of empathic distress. Now, what this research has shown is that if we can activate, when we are confronted with suffering, if we can activate active compassion, meaning what can I do to alleviate suffering? This very intention to alleviate suffering actually activates the part of the brain, which is called the reward part of the brain, the part of the brain that is connected with pleasure, actually, and with positive feelings. And so when I am confronted with very difficult situations, of course, I cannot solve all the problems in the world, but as soon as I find an entry point, where could I do a positive contribution, it will counterbalance the dimension of suffering that has been activated through empathy and actually create an inner force of joy and motivation. So the practice is to keep my inner balance, my inner well-being, is to have a kind of a diet to how much suffering can I allow myself to be exposed. Yeah, you have to be exposed to suffering to have compassion, but if it becomes too much and you can do too little, it will be overwhelming. But then each time I experience some suffering in the world, to do even a small deed, a small contribution to bring happiness and well-being to others will enhance my own happiness and well-being. And therefore, that's a key to relaxation. So not to be passive and just, perceive the suffering, but really to be proactive and do something about it. And that's really a key to resilience, which is very connected to the anecdote that Professor Krishna was sharing about 2 ways to relating to the same cause, right? Either you strengthen the vicious circle and you go into more suffering, or it gives you the strength to transform it into something positive.
Thank you, Auto. Thank you. Dr. Srihari, would you want to add something?
Yeah, I personally feel that if I have to draw from what Adi Shankara says, the root cause of all pain is ignorance. When the pandemic hit us, it was the ignorance of the disease biology which had resulted in the death of many people. I would have to, if I have to look at people all over the world, from the most knowledgeable person to the most ignorant person about this particular disease, people have contributed, people have helped in finding a solution to this. These are not passive people, as Dr. Vinh mentioned. They are the ones who were proactive. Probably a scientist had gone that extra mile trying to understand what was the strain that is operating in a particular region. The most unskilled or semi-skilled or non-skilled person had helped in clearing the dead bodies also. So that means to say, they did not bother about what was the outcome, whether we'll be able to find a vaccination, whether I'll be infected with this virus if I help somebody in clearing a dead body where a person has suffered from coronavirus. People, all walks of life, had come together and tried to find a solution. And I have reasons to believe that we are better off than where we were 2 years ago, around the same time. I think it is a fact that it is competition is always relative, but survival is absolute all the time. Because survival is absolute and competitiveness is relative, one should always give their best. If it means running on a treadmill, I know that at the end of the day, I'll still remain there. I would like to run. I know this is a rat race. I don't mind being a, but whatever we are today is because some people have gone that extra mile required, and that is how they have found a solution. Today we are into using a video conference tool also, because somebody has sacrificed ordinary pleasures of life, and that is how they have taken this meeting to a next level of capability. I think each one of us is capable of making a difference. We can make heaven on earth. Heaven is not somewhere else. Heaven and hell have been created to just make people behave well when they are alive. If hell was not there, many people will not behave well. So I think competitiveness, fighting for any kind of solution for the humanity, the problems that are faced by the humanity, these are all part and parcel of a person who is committed to whatever he is doing, because they'll create the time to do the research. They'll create the time because it is not interested people. Interested people may actually work and salary at the end of the month. Work is not drudgery for everybody. Maybe for 1% of the people, work is pleasure. And it is this 1% which actually makes a difference. So, what are the conditions? We know that there are more viruses than human beings, but still a group of people work together, try to find a solution. In fact, Bill Gates more than 20 years ago has mentioned that if at all, if a virus is going to hit the humanity, then probably we are ill prepared for that. And that is how he has substantially contributed to Gavi, the Global Alliance of Vaccine. So I think somebody should definitely think much beyond the immediate surroundings, and that is how they'll be able to find a solution for it. And I really love competition, because competition is the only thing which will make us bring out the best. I am sensitive to the fact that there are certain things which I cannot change. I will accept it. But there are definitely certain things which I can change, and I'll do it. But where I cannot change, where I cannot accept, I leave that place.
Thank you, Dr. Srihari. Thank you. There's so much to learn, so much to discuss on, new ideas, new things. Let's hope that we can go forward with all these